Today we're going to get into a crime that was so cold, so incredibly calculated, it left even the most hardened investigators just completely shocked. It's this wild story of obsession, of control, and a murder plot that stretched across state lines. And it was all orchestrated by a man who was convinced he was untouchable. So let's dive right in.
You know, this quote from a veteran FBI agent really says it all. For him, this wasn't just another case. The man behind this crime was so manipulative, so completely empty of any remorse, that he actually broke through decades of that professional wall. I mean, that speaks to a level of evil that is just deeply unsettling.
So our story kicks off on what seemed like a totally normal afternoon in Sarasota, Florida. But what happened next? Well, it was nothing short of a complete nightmare.
Just try to imagine this for a second. You're 13-year-old Stevie Bellish. You're coming home from school, probably excited to tell your mom about your day. But instead of that, you walk into a scene of just unimaginable horror. Your 4 baby siblings, 23-month-old quadruplets, are crying in the hallway all alone, and they're covered in blood.
Stevie found her mother, Sheila, on the kitchen floor. The scene was just devastating. Investigators found no forced entry, which immediately suggested that Sheila either knew her attacker or, at the very least, let them into the house. And the most heartbreaking detail of all, the tiny, bloody footprints of her toddlers circling her body, a silent, awful testament that they had witnessed their own mother's murder.
What Sheila did in her final moments is it's beyond incredible. She was shot in the face with a .45 caliber pistol. I mean, an injury that should have killed her instantly. But she got up and she fought back. And even after her throat was cut, her very last act was to drag herself across the floor towards the kitchen phone, almost certainly trying to call for help to save her children. So this was the big question for investigators, right? The attack was vicious, it was personal, and the killer just seemed to walk right in. And that points to a really chilling reality. In 2 out of 3 violent crimes against women, the person who did it is someone they know. So the police had to start looking at those closest to her.
So the investigation officially began, and detectives started right where you'd expect, with Sheila's inner circle.
Okay, so first up was her husband, Jamie. He stood the game from life insurance. A classic motive for sure, but he had a partial alibi with receipts and witnesses from his sales route, so scratch him. Next, they looked at a pool man who had apparently made Sheila pretty uncomfortable, but his DNA didn't match anything at the scene. And finally, there was her ex-husband, Alan Blackthorne. Now, he had a huge motive, fueled by a decade-long, nasty custody battle, but he was confirmed to be hundreds of miles away in San Antonio, Texas.
And just like that, with the 3 most logical suspects cleared, the case went completely cold. Investigators had this brutal murder, a family destroyed by grief, and absolutely no idea where to go next.
But then, a really critical piece of information came in from the most unlikely source you can imagine. And it was about to unravel a conspiracy that was way more complex than anyone could have ever dreamed.
This is it. This is the moment. The case just cracked wide open. A local gardener, a guy named Jake Most, he noticed a suspicious car with a man in camouflage pants parked near Sheila's house. He just had this feeling that something was wrong, so he instinctively memorized the license plate by turning it into a sentence he wouldn't forget. Yes, Bob and 62 girls.
So police run the play, right? But it doesn't register in Florida. It's a dead end. But then, knowing the Bellish family had just moved from Texas, detectives had a thought, and they ran it there. And boom, it was a match. The plate belonged to a white Mitsubishi Eclipse, registered to a 23-year-old small-time criminal named Joey Del Toro. The only problem? There was absolutely no known connection between this guy and Sheila Bellish.
When police finally located Del Toro's car, it was like hitting the jackpot. Inside was a map leading right to Sheila's home, the camouflage pants with her DNA on them, the actual murder weapon, and Del Toro's fingerprint, which was a perfect match for a print found on the dryer in Sheila's utility room. The evidence was just overwhelming, a total slam dunk. But the huge question still hung in the air. Why?
Del Toro had already fled to Mexico, but the investigation just kept rolling. Police learned that if you wanted to find Del Toro, the person you looked for was his cousin, Sammy Gonzalez. When they confronted Gonzalez, he just crumbled. He admitted he'd recruited his cousin for a hit. So Gonzalez then revealed the next link in this crazy chain.
He said he was approached by a man named Danny Rocha, who was a bookie at a local golf course. Rocha showed him a photo of Sheila, said she was a bad mother, and offered up cash to have her punished.
Okay, so let's recap. We have the trigger man, the coordinator who hired him, and the middleman who paid for it. But these guys were all just pawns in a bigger game. So who was the powerful, wealthy person pulling all the strings? Who had the money and the motive to order the murder of a stay-at-home mom in Florida?
The investigation was finally closing in on the man at the very top of the pyramid, and it was about to reveal a motive that was rooted in years and years of obsession and this sick pathological need for control. This is where we finally meet the mastermind.
And the mastermind was none other than Alan Blackthorne, Sheila's multimillionaire ex-husband. The connection? Well, Danny Rocha, the middleman, was a bookie at Blackthorne's own country club. He was orchestrating the murder basically as a favor, trying to get funding from Blackthorne for a sports bar.
I mean, on the surface, this guy Alan Blackthorne was a charming, successful businessman, worth something like $40 million. But in private, he was an absolute monster. Friends and family started to reveal this secret life of extreme emotional abuse, controlling behavior, and these bizarre sexual rituals where he would force Sheila to either participate or just watch. He was a classic sociopath, hiding in plain sight.
After they divorced back in '87, Blackthorne spent an entire decade trying to destroy Sheila, using their own daughters as pawns in this relentless custody battle. Then, in the summer of 1997, out of nowhere, he suddenly dropped the case. But Sheila knew this wasn't some act of peace. She felt that something terrible was coming, so she fled with her family to Florida. For a guy like Blackthorne, who was just not used to losing, well, that was the final straw.
So, with the full conspiracy laid bare, the final challenge was pretty clear. How do you bring a man with millions of dollars and a long history of manipulating the system to justice?
Blackthorne really seemed untouchable in the local courts. But because the plot crossed state lines, it was hatched in Texas but carried out in Florida, it became a federal crime. And that meant the FBI could take over. A search of his mansion turned up a computer-generated map to Sarasota and, this is the kicker, the missing print of the exact photo of Sheila that was used to identify her for the hit.
And in the end, the whole conspiracy just collapsed like a house of cards. Joey Del Toro, the trigger man, pled guilty. Sammy Gonzalez, the coordinator, got 17 years. The middleman, Danny Rocha, received life in prison. And the mastermind, Alan Blackthorne, the guy who thought he could buy his way out of anything, was arrested on a golf course and sentenced to 2 life sentences without parole.
This final thought from one of the investigators really just sums up the horror of this whole case. The plot was a testament to one man's sociopathic need for control, and it ultimately cost a loving mother her life and left 6 children to grow up without her. It just leaves you wondering, for a crime this cold, for an act this evil, what does justice truly look like?